I'll be talking to Mr. Vickson Mcube, CEO of Pan-African Federation of Accountants. We are actually taping this program on the sidelines of the 2019 ICAM conference in Mangoji. Mr. Mcube, I don't know if I've pronounced your name very well, but thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Correctly pronounced as Mcube. Thank you very much, Brian.
we don't get the Mcube here very much.
You're not an exception. That's more the rule than the exception.
Yes, you are heading the Pan-African Federation of Accountants. What does this body do, and what is it all about?
So the accountants profession in Africa looked at its operations. We noticed that there was development in the profession from parts of Africa and not the whole continent. So we decided to come up with a platform where we all, as a profession, from Cape to Cairo and everything in between, can have a common vision on how we can develop the accountants profession. So the operations of PAFA are looking at the strength of each one of the professional organizations, building on each one, sharing the strengths, and eliminating our weaknesses. In other words, we are on the race to the top. We're not looking for a common denominator at the bottom. We're looking at our aspirations on top and want all of us to achieve that ability to be a profession in the continent that can operate anywhere else in the world.
So the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Malawi is a member of PAFA.
That's a very good, you have nailed it, Brian. The Institute of Chartered Accountants in South Africa, in Malawi, in Zambia, in Nigeria, in Morocco, in Cameroon, all over Africa. Currently, we are present in 43 countries.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you happy with the strides the organizations in all these African countries are making towards the contribution of PAFA, or there are gaps that need to be filled?
I have a very serious observation to make, Brian.
Yes.
Even as educated professionals, the effects of colonialism on us have not departed. We speak of Francophone Africa. We speak of Anglophone Africa. We speak of Lusophone Africa. We've never talked of Africa as a continent. Even in our PAFA meetings, we have to grapple with these historic problems. We start saying, no, but we are Anglophone. No, but we are Francophone. So this tends to slow down the progress PAFA is trying to make towards having this great continental body that moves this profession and this moves this continent forward.
What are you insinuating when you're saying we haven't done yet with colonialism?
I don't understand why, Brian, you and I can start referring to ourselves based on who colonized us. I cannot identify myself as an Anglophone African. I'm an African. And in fact, I popularly introduced myself as an African who travels on a Zambian passport, because that's how I got myself. Yeah. But if you are going to say, me, I'm a Francophone African, me, I'm an Anglophone African, me, I'm a Lusophone African, I find it very strange. Why should your unfortunate colonial past continue to haunt how you describe yourself in today's world?
People are introducing themselves using that format today?
Oh, yes. We got this challenge where people think they're still Francophone, they're Anglophone, they're Lusophone. We just want an African of Africans. Forget about who colonized you in the past.
In this conference, you have been speaking on the Agenda 2063. Yes. What is it? What animal is this?
Let me just give you a brief background to that, Brian.
Yeah.
When our African leaders, as pockets of Africa started becoming independent, they decided to look at a vehicle that would drive the whole continent into colonial emancipation so that we all move away from being colonized. So they sat together and came up what we came to know as the Organization of African Unity then. It was OAU. Yeah. Now, it was formed in 1963. There was a continuous movement of liberating Africa from colonial bondage until ultimately the last stronghold of colonialism fell when South Africa became independent. Now, in 2013, the African leaders sat together to say, now, 50 years ago, we started the African Union, which we started the Organization of African Unity, which then transformed the African Union. Now, we have been focusing on the liberation. This is what have been our achievements in the past 50 years. Now, what are we going to do for the next 50 years, hence the 2063? drawn from 2013 up to 2063. What is it that Africa is going to achieve? So they came up with this lovely theme that we're now looking for the Africa we want. This will be an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by our own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. This is what the African leaders came up with. Now, in order to drive this process, they came up with 7 aspirations. And those aspirations cover every aspect of the continent on how Africa can become a better Africa for us all.
And what are they, the 7 aspects?
Now, there are quite a number. They cover issues to do with democracy, governance. They look at the rights of children and women. They look at Africa, resources being utilized for Africa. They look at major projects that Africa can do as a continent that ultimately will make this continent a better place. And that is the aspiration that every African...
Let's talk about education, for example.
Yes. So, here is my challenge. I have been to primary school right through to where I am.
Yeah.
I kept imbibing letters, reading books, passing exams. But ultimately, I never had a connection between how this education must be translated to make Africa a better continent. If I am an accountant, as I was trained to be, I start looking at the interests of my employer. I want them to prosper. But even if the prosperity of my employer is hurting my continent, it didn't bother me. So I came to a conclusion that our problem with African education, as it is now, we got an education without an ideology. We don't know why we should be educated. We've taken education as a way of making a living. If I can get a job, buy a car, have a big house, then I'm an educated person. Speak very good English. So we think we're educated. But ultimately, my question is, how is this, in the bigger context of Agenda 2063, of a better Africa, how is this education system that we are doing now making us prepared for a better Africa? In my view, we are not. Because the moment you get this education, and I don't consider education really, the moment you have read a lot of books and remembered what you read in the book, we think we're educated. I'll give you a good example, what I consider as good education. I am given to understand that when Nelson Mandela was arrested and incarcerated in the Robben Island, the then president of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, wrote a note to him. Somehow it got to Mandela, and when he read it, he cried. And I'm told in that letter, in that small note, Kaunda had said to Mandela, as long as you remain in the 4 walls of Robben Island, the whole of Africa is still in the 4 walls. As long as a fraction of Africa is still under colonial rule, then the whole of Africa is still colonized. Now, that is an education with an ideology. He understood that it's not just getting Zambia independent. Kamuzu cannot have just said, I've liberated Malawi, or whoever it is. You cannot just look at your small corner and get satisfied. So a proper education must be one that drives us into realizing the bigger picture and playing in the bigger picture and looking for a bigger, better for everyone, not just myself.
Is that achievable today?
Yes, it is. Now, here is I'll tell you 2 things. The Nigerians say the best time to plant a tree, if you want a shade, was 25 years ago. That was the best time. But the next best time is today. Because if you plant the day, and this should be our driving force, Brian. Don't worry about Brian. Think about your children and your children's children. One of our myopic problems in Africa, we tend to look at what is in it for me. We are not futuristic. So our education system and these things that we're talking about, we must not be preparing for our lifetime. Let us do things that will matter for the long term and for generations after us. Some of the things that you'll be doing today for the good of Malawi, you may never experience them. In fact, there are a lot of freedom fighters in Africa who died in unmarked graves, who are lying in unmarked graves. But their vision make us today, you and I, be able to sit here on Times TV and we are able to talk freely. To me, that is what an education should do. Give us a long-term view, and not to benefit me, but to benefit the continent and to benefit the generation.
As a continent, we haven't gotten it right, isn't it?
No.
Is that what you're telling me?
No, we haven't gotten it right. We haven't got it. In fact, here is an issue. One time I was on the River Zambezi in Vickson town in Zambia, between Zambia and Zimbabwe. We're having a boat cruise.
Yeah.
And I saw elephants. They were swimming across the Zambezi from Zimbabwe to Zambia. And I asked myself, are these Zambian elephants or Zimbabwean elephants? Ultimately, I told myself it doesn't matter. They are elephants and they enjoy everything. They go to Zambia, they go to Zimbabwe, they are free. To me, this colonial baggage that makes you a Malawian and me a Zambian and the other one a Zimbabwean, the other one a Mozambican, another one a Tanzanian, but we're all the same people living in the neighborhood. I think our education system should have taught us to break those barriers and we start looking at the continent, the humanity of us as an African people, and how we can work together for the betterment of all of us.
It brings me straight to South Africa, where there are xenophobic attacks.
Okay.
How does that marry with the analogy that you're giving?
Now, you have actually brought a very big situation. And I wanted to look at it very objective from both sides.
Yeah.
From the South Africans who are doing that, and to the Africans who left their continent who left their countries to go to South Africa.
Yeah.
Here's my problem. A South African who sees a Malawian as a strange animal has a problem.
Okay.
But a Malawian government that does not create a conducive environment for Malawians to thrive in Malawi is also a problem.
Yeah.
I think you get my balance.
I understand. Yeah.
I have a reason to believe that if we were all doing what I'm dreaming of, a very well-functioning Africa,
Yeah.
you would be happy in Malawi, and you travel to South Africa, and the South Africans travel, we will all be going all over.
Yeah.
And there will be no one who feels resentment at the coming of the other one. But if it comes to a point where the flow is one side, then there's not a functioning Africa. We got to have an Africa where South Africans can go to Nigeria and thrive.
Yeah.
Nigerians can go to South Africa and thrive. So this continent, the problem, when we talk about xenophobia in South Africa, we are merely looking at the consequences of a problem, of a deeper problem.
Yeah, but you were also attributing this problem to African governments.
Yes, definitely. In fact, I believe the African Union is failing the continent. I would strongly say that, because here's the problem. The African Union is sent to go and observe an election in Kenya. They know their problems. Do you know most of the things that create problems for us are elections in Africa? Our elections are so poorly run that there are a lot of dissatisfaction. I can assure you most of the African countries, after an election, they remain in a campaign mode, an election mode for the rest of the 5 years.
Yeah.
Because they are not satisfied with the outcome. We would expect the African Union to then come up and become independent arbiters and say, guys, here you made a mistake. You cannot proceed like that. So as long as we do not correct the hygiene factors in every African country, that then make us peacefully live in our countries without having to look at another country, these issues will continue. And remember, if we have an electricity grid here, which was good for this hotel, then I build a house there. Another one builds. But we are not improving the electricity grid.
Yeah.
Sooner we start having power cuts. The powers will trip because the infrastructure is not matching the growth around. Now, here's the issue also of xenophobia. And I don't even think it's xenophobia, because the word xenophobia, phobia is something that you fear.
Okay.
Do you fear lions?
I do fear lions.
Have you ever gone to chase lions and try to beat them with the sticks?
No.
You avoid them. So to me, if the issue was xenophobia, would have been running away.
Okay.
So the fact that the South Africans are beating people is not, then they're not xenophobic. It's another issue. I think is the issue of resource constraints.
Yeah.
When you go there, and if I go there to South Africa, and I'm living in South Africa, I am creating a demand on the resources. And those resources are not growing at the same level as the number of the local population and the coming population. So in the fight for resources, and I'm sure you have seen when you go in the bush, when you are looking after cattle, I don't know whether they grew up looking after cattle. The bulls, when they go in the crow, each one wants to dispute the other so they've got the females.
Yeah.
Now that natural instinct is still in us. So when there's a small resource, we will fight each other for that small resources until this continent developed its cake so well that all of us can eat as much as we want until we are so full. These problems shall continue. And let me just give you a quick history. In 1985, there was a big movement in Nigeria where they said, expel Ghanaians. There are too many in Nigeria. And I know some of these things are not reported, but if you go through history, you'll find that tens and thousands of Ghanaians were deported from Nigeria back to Ghana. All because of the same issue of small resources not found in one place, and everyone's going to suck from that small resource. So if this continent functions, if Africa functions, if Agenda 2063 is well implemented, then these issues of xenophobic attacks, or whatever we can call them, will become an exception rather than the rule. But as long as the only attractive part of Africa is South Africa, I'm afraid to continue.
What can, therefore, African governments do to deal with this problem?
They must stop scratching my back and I'll scratch your back.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
If a brother has messed up, tell him you are messing up. Can you imagine when the Zimbabwe problem started?
Yeah.
In fact, there is a deeper history than the current farm invasion. When Zimbabwe became independent, there are two prominent tribes in Zimbabwe. There were the Ndebele, which I would call the Amangoni people, who include the Ngonis who are here, by the way, in Zambia and the Swatis. These are called Amangoni people. There was a conflict between those two, and the bigger tribe, which had won the election, suppressed the other tribe. Actually, there was a lot of killing there. But the African governments kept quiet, okay? They didn't see the problem. So when the farm invasion starts in Zimbabwe, they're not condemning it, they're tolerating it. And they even say it's a hero. But meantime, the Zimbabwean on the ground is suffering and it keeps going to South Africa, to Zambia. I'm sure there's some in Malawi, and I've met some in Kenya.
Yeah.
They are all over. You know why? They had to seek a refuge of where to be, not because they are under colonial rule, but because the hygienic factors in their country have become unbearable for an average person. Yeah. So this became the problem. So I am saying the African leaders should tell each other openly and say, my friend, here you're not doing the right thing. Don't think that, no, if I tell him tomorrow and I do the same thing, he'll tell me. No, let's be candid. Yeah. It's wrong, it's wrong.
So the African leaders, they are not being honest with each other?
No, never. I mean, the way they talk when I see them on television saying these elections have been free and fair, but the citizens are complaining. So how did who is saying there's a problem? There's no problem. So to me, the African leaders must be frank with each other. If someone is doing wrong, if someone is pushing their country in a direction that is going to create problems for the citizens, they must be quick to speak. And in fact, South Africa must also be to blame. Because at a political level, they are not using their political muscle to help Africa move forward. They are just accommodating.
Do they have the potential to help other African countries?
My friend, if people are coming to your house when there are problems, it means you have a potential to go and tell the fathers of those children. I was giving an example to someone that if every day my children leave my house, they come to our house to watch television every day. Soon you have nowhere to sit with your family. You have no privacy with your children, with your wife, because every part of the house is full of children your neighbor's children coming to watch television. You should have the courage to tell your neighbor, my friend, go buy TV. Stop drinking beer, buy TV.
Mr. Mcube, we'll have to take a short break. We'll be back with you in a moment.
Thank you very much.
In case you're just joining us, this is Times exclusive, airing on Times Network. I'm joined by Mr. Vickson Mcube, CEO for Pan-African Federation of Accountants. The program tonight is coming to you courtesy of Rainbow Paints. We'll take a short break. We'll be back momentarily.
I love brilliant green on my walls. I love signal red, sweet lime, electric blue. I just love golden yellow.
You get all that and more at Rainbow Paints. Imagine a water-based paint that is water-resistant. Imagine a paint that is absolutely washable to remove dirt. And it guarantees you 10,000 cleaning scrubs over its lifespan without losing its luster. There can only be one paint that does just that, and that paint is Acrylic Sheen. Get yours today at all leading hardware stores. Rainbow Paints. Peace of mind. Part of the deal.
Welcome to the other half of the program Times exclusive here on Times Television. On the sidelines of the ICAM conference, I managed to bring Mr. Vickson Mcube, Chief Executive Officer for Pan-African Federation of Accountants, in this edition of the program. Welcome back to the other half of the
Brian,
program.
thank you very much.
So, countries that are doing well, they have potential to speak candidly to fellow African countries.
Yes.
This is not happening.
Yes.
When they meet over tea or conferences, they praise each other.
Yes, they do.
Why are they not dealing straight away with this problem?
I don't know. I have never been in those meetings, but I always wonder why not. Let me just speculate. Like I say, I suspect we are covering each other's back, so when I do it, no one will condemn me.
Because the only one who has stood up and said, you're not doing right, is the former president of Botswana,
Yes.
Khama.
Yes, he did.
But he told Mugabe when he was alive that, no, this road that you are taking is not the right road.
Yes. May I just add also that the late Mwanawasa did it.
Okay.
He also told him, yes, no, you're not taking my neighboring country in the right direction. Remember, they are both neighbors.
Yeah.
Botswana and Zambia are neighbors to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
They were candid to tell him that, no, look, sir, we're not happy with what you're doing. But of course, there is a multitude who rise to defend. Yeah.
The other component you talked in the Agenda 2063 is corruption. How are you viewing it? Is it an opportunity? Is it a problem? Is it a challenge?
Now, I'll tell you one thing. I'll use some medical terms. They say there's an outbreak of a disease. That means that a lot of people are being affected by it. It moves from being an outbreak, it becomes an epidemic. It has become so prevalent, it is almost everywhere. Then when it moves from being an epidemic to a pandemic, now the whole country has been affected, or the whole area is affected. Corruption in Africa is now pandemic. And here's the painful thing, Brian, about the African corruption. Corrupt Americans invest in America. I'm not saying Africa is only corrupt. Corrupt British invest in Britain. Corrupt French, by and large, have their money in France. Corrupt Africans take out the money out of the continent. How, ladies and gentlemen, can we ever survive in a continent where every person, again, back to our education without an ideology. How would I? Let me give you an illustration. As a village boy, I always like illustrations. You are 10 brothers, and your father has a lot of cattle. So one of the brothers gets the idea that, no, being in the middle, I may not get as much cattle as as the rest of my brothers when my father dies. So what does he do? He starts slowly stealing from the family crop, taking the cattle to a far neighbor, okay? Keeping it. Now, here is the thing about cattle. As villagers, we use cattle manure as fertilizer crops. So those animals that have been removed from the cattle from the family crop are going to be giving manure to the person who is going to look after them. Number two, we use the milk for our nutrition. That milk is going to the neighbor, the one where you took your animals from.
Yeah.
Number three, when they die, we eat the meat. Now that meat will not be eaten, because when you take those things, you're not going to be eating the meat because you don't want to be seen.
That's right.
So to be eaten by the neighbor. We use the bones and the horns, and we know in the village we use the skin as a bed. We use the bones and sometimes for fertilizer. Also, they can be allowed to rot until they become fertilizer. So all those immediate uses of the cows are now with the neighbor. So what is happening to the family in this process? They have been deprived of the use of the manure, the milk, the meat, the skins, and the bones. Everything has been sent to a neighbor. Now that is the problem with the corruption of Africa. You get the resources from the continent and take it to the east, to the west, or wherever, but never in Africa. So what has happened to us here? Now, here is how money works. When you take money to a bank, they don't keep it in a box.
Yeah.
It is used as working capital in that country.
That's right.
So those countries, we are financing their working capital by moving money from Africa to those countries. Okay? Now, you are building hotels and creating employment in those countries.
Because people are borrowing that money.
Yes, they are borrowing. You know, and I always laugh when an African, a dead African leader is finally people are following up, no, it's corruption. So what those countries say, we are freezing these accounts. You know what it means? The relatives of that person cannot access the money. But what is it doing there? It's still working. When they say we're freezing, they're not saying we'll put your money in a freezer. They are saying that you have no access, but ultimately it is still working there. So we are transferring our resources, our working capital as a continent into other people's hands. And what do? They then get the interest and bring it back to us as loans and aid, and we even clap. Oh, we have development partners, they are doing this. But it's your money that you, without proper thinking, you took to another country, and now it is coming back to you as a loan or even as aid, and you even praise them because of your
It's our money.
Your money, yes, it's your money. Yeah. So how can a continent develop? How can we get in Africa we want? And let's look at neighborhoods. You may find that some people are using Zambia to undermine Malawi, or vice versa. Let's look at a nice country like DR Congo. That would have been the gem of Africa. If this DR Congo, if every African leader for all our thinking would just concentrate on say, let us stabilize DRC, make all the resources of DRC function for that country, the spillover effect would affect Malawi, right, Nigeria. Just the power, the famous power dam that is always in the drain boards, would change the whole of Africa's electricity supply. But because when I get there, I see the gold and diamonds, I also want to participate. Okay? We get leaders, African leaders, who then, as an internal auditor, what do we say? We will say that when a person goes in a company with a poor control system, they don't correct it. They benefit from it. So that is what is happening. People would rather benefit, and personally, not for their people, for themselves, instead of making things work for all of us. So unless, Brian, our mindset changes, you and I and him there, all of us change our mindset, we start looking at a continent called Africa as our continent.
Is this battle against corruption winnable?
It's
yes or no?
Very winnable.
It is.
Very winnable. It takes a stand.
But it's very complicated, as you have
It's not even
said.
complicated. It's not even complicated. In fact, my advocacy is that, can we stop calling it corruption and say theft?
Okay.
Because, you know, educated people have many words. They say, no, this was a misappropriation.
Yeah.
This was a fraud. No, this one was a misuse. This one is corruption. This is illicit financial flows. I think that is a waste of time. Let's just say a simple thing. If resources meant for something have been used for something else into someone's pocket, let's first say theft. How? By corruption. Theft. How? By fraud. Let's not first describe it. You know, there are people who believe that corruption is a good thing. Because they see when you say this one is corrupted, he's driving very nice cars, and there's a beautiful house. You think, no, it's a good thing. No, let's say he's a thief.
Yeah.
Once you say, if every corrupt person were to be accused today of theft, the primary charge, he's been charged with theft, it will be different.
How can the citizens in this continent follow their money? Because every year we pass national budgets. And this money is indeed approved in Parliament.
Yes.
But when we look back at where that money has gone, for example, they may promise that we're going to build A, B, C, D. Parliament approves that money.
Yeah.
And a year back, you find there is nothing that has been done. How can then the citizens follow through that money?
Brian, you're raising the very, very important issue. Who collects taxes in Malawi?
We have a body called Malawi Revenue Authority.
Okay,
Yes.
Malawi Revenue Authority. Is there another body that monitors how the money is used?
I'm meant to believe that the office of the Auditor General.
No. The Auditor General comes a year later after things have happened.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You know, we have this effective revenue collection machinery.
Yeah.
That even when you have you are crossing the border, they check, what are you carrying?
Yeah, that's right.
Very effective. But we have never had any African country has this effective monitoring mechanism to ensure that money is applied to the best interest of the country. You get the point?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So to me, we need to move away from this just strict collection. We also got strict expenditure mechanism. Don't leave it to the beneficiaries, because who benefits from badly used money? It's the people who are, and the Auditor General comes and
which people are you referring to?
The what do you call it? The political structures.
Okay.
The government infrastructure.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, let's name things the way they are.
Yes.
The people who ultimately benefit from wrong things are those who can buy influence using our money.
That's right, yeah.
You know, I don't know, I feel pained because someone comes to my villager and says, I'm going to give you a 10 kg bag of maize and maybe 5 liter of cooking oil and a bit of kapenta. I don't know what you call those small fishes.
Yeah, we call them kapenta here as well. Yeah.
So you give that person. You have your kettle, Brian. I come to your crow and steal your kettle. And 2 years later, I bring it and say, Brian, I'm a good man. Please vote for me. Here's a cow. It's your cow. And you think I'm kind, but I stole it from you.
Yeah.
So all these briberies that go through in elections, people are using our own money to bribe us to vote for them so that they steal from us again. So we got to be very candid. Yeah. Society must rise and mobilize itself.
Yeah, but when the society rises, then they are labeled as agents of opposition.
Yeah, let me give you a good example, Brian, now to raise this. We once had Kamuzu Banda here.
Yes.
We overthrew him. I'm allowing for this purpose of this interview. We brought him back. He moved out. There was Mutare. Did you see a progressive change in the way of being of the Malawans? So it means that even the opposition has not articulated themselves well when in power. So the people's confidence becomes drained.
Yeah.
So we need a situation where when there's change, the change comes to the people.
Yeah.
You cannot say, I am changing this DJ, but the next one plays the same music.
The same song, yeah.
So there's no difference.
Yeah.
So to me, society is starting to get fatigued because when they change, no sooner has the person come in, he does the very things that annoyed you in the past.
Yeah.
So to me, society must now be very focused on what we want to achieve. That means that, I'll give you a good example of the South African model. You know, in terms of governance model, South Africa is a beautiful model. You as a citizen, if you think the president has done something wrong, you go to the courts. And the courts, if they think the president is wrong, they'll find against him. They don't care. So, no, Mr. President, here, wrong.
Because that was my next question. How can we police those that are in power?
And my answer is simple.
Yes.
Let's have strong institutions, not strong individuals.
How can we have strong institutions when it is the president who hires the chief executive officer for example, the anti-corruption body?
So that means that there are no strong institutions. Strong institutions cannot be created by an individual. So we got to come up, the Malawian constitution, or whichever, whether the Zambian constitution or the South African, must be relooked to ensure that the power is devolved from an individual. A president's or the president's office is one person.
Yeah.
Now we may speculate and say, and you know, educated people have a lot of weights. But the truth is, if it requires the power vests in the president, it's invested in one person. Because the elected person is one.
Yeah.
Only one.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, the founding documents must be the ones that devolve power from an individual and take it to a bigger body.
Yeah.
You cannot say that I will appoint the Chief Justice, and then I'll give him independence. He can't, because I appointed him.
Yeah, yeah.
There's got to be a mechanism through which, I don't know if they've seen the Kenyan system. I've seen when a judge is being appointed in Kenya, it's a public hearing. People asking questions. Yeah, like you, Brad, you say now, this is how I interview people. You also go, I'm coming to that committee of appointing the Chief Justice. I'm coming, I want to give my you grill him also. Say, no, Mr. Chief Justice, one time when we were young, one time I saw you do this. Let him answer in the eyes of the public. You know, I was very respectful when the Chief Justice of Kenya picked a Bible. I said, if anyone can say that he's seen me do corruption, let him come forward. I can swear on this book, and he put the Bible down. No one could stand up against him. So when I heard that the Chief Justice of Kenya has nullified an election, I understood where he's coming from.
That's right.
He's an immovable guy. He doesn't care. But if we are going to have a system where I owe it to you, how can I be firm? I know if I owe it to you, I owe it to you to continue. If you're not happy with me, you get rid of me. So when I'm talking of strong institutions, it is the whole governance structure around that.
So we can only fight or uproot corruption in the government establishment if we have strong institutions.
Yes.
But what if we don't have strong institutions? What can the people do then?
The people must demand strong institutions. Remember, no matter how a politician looks like, he's got one fear, a voter. Every politician fears a voter.
That's why they don't like demonstrations or protests.
Because they know the voter is about to talk. If a voter is not talking the language, if the voter starts to talk that language, a politician sits up. Now, while talking about corruption, let me also be balanced. Corruption also comes from the private sector, because we tend to think it's government. Who then funds the corruption when it comes to government? Who wants those contracts to build roads? It's the private sector who then pump money, who when they do the costing, and that's why I come back to my accountant's profession. They are the ones who are sitting to do the costing. And they even factor in the bribes that they're going to pay. Now, how can a country with a profession that is supposed to have ethics, how can we survive, Charles, Brian, you, as a journalist, who I expect to dig the truth out of me, have money in your pocket from me? If you are the collaborator with the person who you are supposed to be interviewing to get the truth, where does the society live? Nowhere.
That's right,
we are all a captive of the educated. Then you have the accountants, instead of playing a role in making Africa better, they are making their pockets better. The lawyers, the engineers, because if the road has no drainage, how did it pass? I mean, I was once in a country, I want to mention it. It was flooded. There's no drainage. It was raining. So all cars have to start swimming. And I said in my mind, I even put roads that was still on Facebook, I said, I'm wondering where the engineers were when this road was approved as well constructed. There are no drainages. So our professions in Africa must learn to focus on the people. Like I say, my continent, my people, I am an African.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Quite amazing how time passes when you're having a good conversation. Your final thoughts tonight, are you optimistic about this continent?
I am very optimistic, Brian. I'm very optimistic. In fact, every day I wake up, I believe that a new dawn is coming for Africa. And I believe Agenda 2063, well implemented, well directed, will transform this continent into what we all want it to be. A beautiful continent where we can all proudly say, I'm an African. Even if someone says you're an African, say, yes, I am.
What are you reading this week? What are you reading this week?
I am still reading Agenda 2063.
We wish we had more time. Quite intriguing, I must say, hearing you talk tonight. Vickson Mcube, CEO for Pan-African Federation of Accountants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for joining us tonight.
I'm very happy to appear on your much acclaimed television station.
Thank you very much. Quite honored. Well, on that note, we conclude this edition of the program Times Exclusive. In this edition of the program, I've been talking to Vickson Mcube, CEO for Pan-African Federation of Accountants. My name is Brian Banda, from all of us here at the Lecture District of Mangoji. Thank you very much for joining us. and goodbye.